So I cannot believe we are at the end of another year. It's the holidays again, and oftentimes there's a mix of emotions that come up, right? There's all this anticipation and excitement and hope, and you want to see everybody again. And then the reality sometimes of getting there is exhaustion and, triggering and all sorts of other emotions that come up. So I thought I'd dedicate this blog to how to avoid social burnout and just giving you a few tips that I find to be the most compassionate to me, compassionate to others, and helpful for the holidays. So let's give you your survival guide. So let's start with, even when you're with others, self-care isn't selfish. It's self-full. And if you want to be there for the amazing Christmas party that night, and then New Year's Eve, and all the other things that are going to be going on, really start by asking yourself, what am I going to do to take care of me? How do I reset? Am I someone who gets my energy by extroversion, or am I an introvert that really recharges when I have my own space and my own time, whether it's working out or just creating that little structure for yourself and that space in your day? How are you going to do that? For me, it's about eating. I have to know how I'm going to make sure I take care of my body and myself and feel really energized. So how are you going to be involved and proactive about your own self-care so that you can be self-full for the holidays? Another one that I have really started to realize is sometimes it's not other people that are actually the problem. Sometimes it's my own self-talk. And so some self-compassion is a gift that I'm going to give myself this year. Oftentimes I can get into a perfectionistic nature where I want everything to be just so. But there's a real big difference between perfectionism and excellence. So excellence is when you give something your best, you have a certain amount of time, you do your best, and then you let it go, right? You learn from whatever mistakes there are or whatever you didn't do perfectly. But perfectionism is that relentless beating of yourself, like, why didn't I do this? And I should have done that, and I got to do it one more time, and not letting yourself off the hook, even though you're trying really hard, you're doing your best. So the second thing I'd say is, when you're wrapping everybody else's gift, I think paying attention to your own thoughts and giving yourself some self-compassion would be amazing. It's always interesting to me when you see people you haven't seen in a while, and I don't know about you, but in the Indian culture, people seem to always want to comment on your weight. Most people in other cultures don't say things like that out loud, but they'll say things like, wow, Neha, you're looking really healthy these days. And so sometimes I get triggered by some of those things. I want to fight back with, oh my God, do you know how hard I worked? I launched a book this year and I did this and I did that. Listen, another tip is, how about this year? Don't react. Let's respond. So respond rather than react. And the way that you unhook from your own biology is when you're going into a situation where things may have been tough before, or someone says something and you feel your whole body contracting and clenching. That's the moment where you take a nice slow deep breath, recognize that that's happening, and expand your body at the time that it wants to contract, and then just don't say anything. Get up and grab something. Does anyone need a drink? Give yourself some physical space, give yourself some emotional space, and start by not reacting the way that you normally would. There's so much more that we can do. There's books I've written about it. There's books many people have written about it. But I think the first step is just hitting the pause button. So hit the pause button, and when you're with family and old friends, it's kind of easy to get triggered, more easy than your regular everyday. So hit the pause button. Another thing that I'd say is really knowing where you end and someone else begins. So these are about boundaries. And chapter 18 of my book, Powered by Me, is a whole chapter not only on how to draw boundaries, knowing what you value, in what order you value it, and where you end and someone else begins. That's really, really important. There's old ways of being with the holidays and people who knew you in high school and all of this. And that may not be you anymore. A really good phrase that I learned was, it sounds like you and I had a different experience of what just happened or what that meant. So if somebody says something at the dinner table or when you're out grabbing drinks or whatever it is, and they interpreted something you said to be different than what you meant, you can really say, like, it sounds like you and I had a different experience of what just happened. Or you and I had a different experience of what happened when we were 16. It's a really nice way not to make people wrong, and instead kind of allow grace for everyone. So you're going to give yourself self-compassion, but you're also going to give grace to others. And finally, what I'd say is, when things get tough, when you're feeling exhausted, when you're having that whole mix of emotions, when things aren't what you thought they'd be, there are some ways to find your way back to your peaceful heart. And so one of them is always going to be gratitude. And gratitude, know how you feel, like what you feel grateful for, and know how you receive gratitude. So if you know that acts of service, so for example, my dad always makes me chai, and I love it. It just feels like I'm coming home. So I tell him that. I say, Dad, I love it when you make chai. For me, I just feel so loved, and he feels good about it. And I say, is that something we can do while I'm home? I would love, did you notice how I just said we can do? What I really meant was, Dad, is that something that you would do for me while we're home? I would really appreciate it. Also, just be grateful for yourself. If what you get to do is hit the pause button once, but maybe you lose your temper or you react another time, have that self-compassion for yourself that you did it differently once and you'll do it next time. So gratitude is one of the ways that I find my way back to my peaceful heart. Another way is being authentic. If there's things that you've held back and you haven't really said, authenticity and having the conversations you need to have is another way to feel really grounded and settled in who you are. Which is, I used to believe that, and things, experiences, interactions have changed what I believe. So it's true that I may have said that when we were young, but now I feel differently. So allow yourself to show up as who you really are. Don't feel like you have to stay back in a version of you that was decades ago. So I'd say service is the last piece here, which is such a profound way. If you're ever feeling down or you want a boost, give to someone else that's less fortunate than you. So what can you do this holiday season to help yourself find your way back to your peaceful heart? Is it service? Is it gratitude for someone else, for all the things you have? Is it being more authentic and showing up as your authentic self? So whatever it is, just know there's so many ways. Just pick one of these. If any of these resonate more than the other, just pick one. And it'll be your survival guide that'll help you make it through the holidays a little bit differently than before. All right, everybody, happy holidays.